Hi everyone, I'm Brandon Bonifer and you are on Focus. Over the last several weeks, we've been reaching out to business leaders and communities throughout our coverage area just to see what it is that they're doing to move forward during this pandemic. Over the last week, we've really embraced the fact that small businesses are key to our success as we move into the next phase of reopening our state and our nation. And it's easy to say, and it's easy to come by content this week because it is what was supposed to be Small Business Week here across the great USA, but that has been postponed, but our coverage is not. Today, we're going to be meeting with some banking individuals and leaders in the communication and commercial financing roles at Prevail Bank, which is a bank that's been in our communities for a long time. They have 9 locations that reach all the way from Eau Claire to Wausau and Phillips to Baraboo. This bank and this broadcast today is going to be about what they're doing in their communities and what they're doing to help the small businesses as we continue to move forward. We're going to start with Stacy. Stacy, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, Brandon, thank you for having us.
So you are the marketing officer at Prevail Bank.
Yes, I am.
So talk a little bit about Prevail Bank. Obviously, in the last 6 months, you guys have had a name change. You've added locations. When did that process start, and when did it kind of complete?
Well, the process starts, the acquisition takes a long time. We look at it more like a merger because Time Federal Savings Bank has been around a long time. River Cities Bank had been around for quite some time as well. And we took the best of both worlds to merge them together. Time Federal Savings Bank was known as a leader for mortgages, and River Cities is known for having everything, but more so for being a business bank and providing business services. So by melding it together, we were able to put together a very strong local bank and grow.
Which is really critical during this time. Having the ability to really serve those small businesses in our area is going to be really important, and it's going to be important for a long period of time. You know, there's no end date to when we're going to be back to normal. If normal will ever be normal, maybe we are in the new normal. I'm not sure the answer to that is, but as you guys have been experiencing the last few weeks, what type of conversations or community outreach have you guys had as an organization? You mentioned that you guys were doing some fundraisers or some drive-through fundraisers. What has been some of your guys' activities at the bank that you've been doing?
Well, as soon as this happened, we wanted to know how to help our communities, especially as we were learning that it was going to be a longer stay-at-home effort. So we chose a local nonprofit in each of our communities to donate to, and then also provide an opportunity for local people to visit us and drive in our drive-ups and donate. So this week and next week, we're going to be giving to those nonprofits. We're donating together with our communities over $5,500 to local entities in each market. That's a total of $5,500 altogether.
That is awesome. You know, this podcast is really going to be about commercial banking, but you mentioned that you guys are strong in mortgage lending as well. You know, during this time, the interest rates are at a pretty low interest rate. Have you guys seen a lot of refinancing, or have you encouraged a lot of your consumers to say, hey, maybe to reduce some of your monthly liabilities, now would be a good time to refinance your loan?
Yes, most definitely. We've been seeing record numbers in people refinancing or even buying or building and showing an interest in needing a mortgage or refinancing. So we have online applications on our website at prevail.bank, and people can go and apply online at any time.
Well, thanks for the information. Obviously, guys, as you guys have been watching interest rates, maybe you've been home seeing the news, it hasn't made a lot of headlines, but interest rates are at an all-time low. So if you had a 30-year mortgage or a 20-year mortgage or wherever you were in your time frame of paying down those mortgage liabilities, there's a good chance if you would take the opportunity to refinance right now. We've seen or heard people say that they've saved hundreds to tens of dollars per month, which is pretty significant, especially when we're just kind of looking at an uncertain future in a moment. But talking about small business, this was supposed to be National Small Business Week. And over the last 6 weeks, we've talked to dozens of small business leaders, and a lot of them have given us a lot of optimism. They've shown a lot of passion for their community, but yet at the same time, they still have a lot of uncertainty of where things are moving forward. Now, we're here with Lonnie Retz, who is the Commercial Banking Officer at Prevail Bank. Lonnie, what has been some of the conversations that you've had with small business owners throughout your guys' area?
Well, we've had, obviously, like you had mentioned, many conversations, and there is a lot of unknown right now. There's a lot of concern about how long this COVID-19 issue will continue. But the conversations we're having are varied, but for the most part, very concerning. And it's, how do I keep my business going? How, I think there's the general feeling that if we can get through this period, that things will bounce back, and of course we're going to be fine. But there's a lot of concern right now about how can I keep my business afloat? How can I keep the employees? We're coming off a quite substantial time period where it was very difficult to get employees and get the employees you want. So with COVID-19 hitting, there's a huge concern about if we have to lay employees off for any reason, are we going to be able to get those employees back? So the general concern about business and how do I keep going, and then obviously the long-term concern about not only the business aspect but the employees, and how can we keep them not only healthy but employed and going strong.
Now, we are in our second wave of funding for PPP, which is a payroll protection program. How have you guys used that as a tool to help some of those businesses, or at least give them some guidance over the next 8 weeks as they become funded or fill out an application? Tell us a little bit about that, and maybe some of the eligibility for those businesses to even apply.
Well, the PPP, as it's called, has been it's a fantastic program to help cover a lot of the concerns individuals and businesses have. So what we have been, we've been extremely busy, obviously, over the last month or 2 to 3 weeks. That the initial PPP lasted, I believe, just over 2 weeks, or around 2-week period, and the program was obviously very popular. So those funds ran out. What we've done through that is worked with as many of our customers as we could to make sure they have those funds available, so that they can continue to run their business and pay their employees. The program is actually set up so that the dollar amount that any one business can qualify for is based on their payroll. And in simple terms, you can take 2.5 times your monthly payroll to calculate out a loan balance. From that standpoint, what happens is once we fund the loan and the loan, or once the loan is approved and you sign the documents, you then have 8 weeks in which you can use those funds for really specific items. One, it's got to be for payroll expenses, it's for rent, mortgage interest, or utilities. So it is limited. It's not a product that you can go out and just use for other expenses. But in most small businesses, the number one expense they have is the payroll expense. So this program was really established to help keep the employees working and help the employers pay their employees. So 75% of that loan, whatever the loan amount calculates out to, has to be used for payroll expenses.
So Lonnie, we'll talk a little bit about the forgiveness and how that works here in a few minutes. But those small business leaders that are listening right now, maybe they're in a position where their doors are still closed, or they can't really, it doesn't make sense for them to have their staff working because there's simply no work to do. Could they still apply for this PPP and get the dollars in and use it, knowing that it would strictly be a loan that would be termed out over 24 months at a fixed interest rate? Or if they can't employ their staff, it does not make sense for them to really use this program?
Well, that's really a question that, and that would be one of the conversations we have with our customer is, as with any loan, you want to make sure it's going to be a loan that's going to be appropriate for your business. And the example you have given here is a good example. If you're closed up and you have no intentions of calling the employees back, and it just may not make good business sense to do that if you're not allowed to do such at this time, the PPP may not be the best program for you. There are other SBA programs out there, and the one I'm thinking of is it's called the EIDL, which is the Emergency Injury Disaster Loan. And that one is set up that it's a longer pay period in that you don't have to make a payment for a year, and then the terms are a little bit better. So to answer your question, it depends on the business and what is going to be their capacity to turn the PPP loan into monthly payments and how quick they can pay it back. Because the one drawback to the PPP loan is it is a 24-month payback period, and 6 months of that is deferred. So you really are paying back that entire loan in 18 payments. And it's communicating with our customers at that time what is the best plan for you. And the PPP certainly may be a program, but it's not the program for everybody in every situation.
Now, we talk about forgiveness, and we talk about 75% of that PPP program or those funds need to go towards payroll. Is the business owner able to pay themselves, pay their spouse, pay other family members that were employed with the business prior to the pandemic starting, or how does that funding work for the business owner that may be on payroll?
The business owner, generally speaking, and obviously I want to be talking to the individual business to determine exactly who can be paid, but yes, for the most part, if you were employed with the business, meaning you're the owner but you're one of the employees of the business, and your family members in the example you had given are actually employed and have drawn a wage from the business prior to the COVID-19 crisis hitting, you would be able to collect an income from the PPP at that time. So it's part of the forgiveness aspect of it does take into account, it takes into account the number of employees that you have prior to this virus hitting, and then as we go through the process, and there's an 8-week process after the loan is funded where you can make the payments to obviously your employees, and your family, if they were on the payroll prior to that, certainly can be paid as part of that program also.
So the SBA has set this up that you have to, if you are a small business, you want to apply for the PPP, you have to go through an SBA lender. And through this conversation, we haven't identified it, but I'm going to assume it, that Prevail Bank is an SBA lender. For those people that are looking at this program yet and still want to apply, they work with an SBA lender to get the application, to get approved and get the funding. But do you still encourage those small businesses to reach out to their accounting firm to really make better sense of which program, if it be the EIDL program or the PPP program, to ask their accountant or financial professionals in that realm of what might be a better suit for them? And do you work with the accountants and bookkeepers at all to help either get the loan application prepared or simply help understand how the funds should be distributed?
Yes to all those questions, actually. We do work with, and we had several customers who may have worked with their accountant to, in part, put the information together to handle and to process the application. The discussion we have in trying to determine which program is most appropriate for the individuals, in our specific case, that discussion a lot of times may have been us or with Prevail Bank and the customer because of our knowledge of the different programs. But certainly we also encourage, business owners to always involve their accountants and attorneys and whomever else they have as business partners to help work through these times. I mean, these are some difficult times, and we're going through issues that we've never encountered before, certainly in our lifetimes. So it's always good to get advice from other individuals, and certainly your professional partners. But a lot of those discussions that we have at Prevail Bank are strictly working with our customers and saying, it's giving them options, and ultimately it's still their business. They have to make the decisions, but we want to make sure we're providing that advice that can help them make the best decision for them. So it's using your professional partners and relying on our experience at the same time.
So as of Wednesday, May 6th at 11:01 a.m., to the best of your knowledge, is there still funding available for the PPP program?
There is. Well, I looked up last night, so unless there was a huge surge this morning, there was still approximately $130 billion available, which, I've always had problems throughout this whole process of really determining. I don't know what $350 billion is as far as how long that type of money or whatever will last, but I can tell you, I looked last night and they had funded roughly, it ended up being, I think, $181 billion was funded as of 5 o'clock last night, which would mean there's, roughly $130 billion or so left over. So, and this program has been on the second wave now for, about a week and a half or so. So there are funds available, but it is a program that is a first come, first serve. So I think it's important that if someone is interested in this program, that, they contact, hopefully Prevail Bank and have the discussion on, is this a program that can help me, and is it a program that I can benefit from and make sense for my business?
So Lonnie, if I'm a business owner and I'm listening, I still haven't, went ahead and made an effort to consider this a PPP program. What's the first thing I should be doing when I get off this podcast? Should I be calling you as a lender? Should I be calling my bookkeeper to try to get my financial documents prepared? Where do I really begin the conversation?
The best start is to contact your banker, to contact the Prevail Bank, have the discussion, make sure you have an idea of what can this program do, how does it work, and then at the same time you'll get the advice of what information am I going to need, and from that conversation then it may be going back, and it most likely will be contacting your accountant to get these documents and maybe get the information that needs to be collected, and at the same time ask their advice on it. But I do think contacting the bank is the best option, at least to get started. Certainly there's information, and one of the concerns about the PPP program is the government did a great job on trying to get these funds out as quickly as possible. But when you do that on a nationwide program, some of that information is not always necessarily interpreted correctly, or there becomes myths. Well, I heard I could do this, and I heard I could do that. And what you really want to do is get the most accurate advice you can, so you can determine, is this program good for me, and is it the program that will help my business the most?
So before all this started, Lonnie, I recall a press conference where they said you'd be able to fill out the application in the morning and be funded in the afternoon. And then I seen online articles and press releases from SBA that their server was down. They weren't able to process applications because there was over 4,000 applications coming in per hour. So as a business owner, I'm hearing this and I get two sides of it. That one, this is going to be really easy and painless, and then I hear some news that there's been some struggles in the system. But like you mentioned, this is a national program. It's nationwide. There's tens of thousands of applications going in every day. Nearly $500 billion is being invested in this program for small businesses. What is the real expectations that a business owner should expect to say, hey, from the time I take interest in this, this is the process and the commitment that I'm going to have to make, and just to help them understand if this is worth their time and effort?
Well, the process is, and you're right, I think the intentions when the program first rolled out was to be, let's get this going and get the funds in their hands in the next couple of days. The biggest issue we've had from a bank standpoint was the SBA certainly was overloaded. I mean, I read one article where in the first 14 days of the PPP program, they funded in 14 days more volume than they funded in the previous 14 years total. So their systems were not able to accept that type of volume, and that was frustrating from our bank standpoint, from the customer standpoint. But the reality is where we're at right now is, the application, I can promise you from years of looking at SBA applications, it may be the simplest application I've ever seen an SBA offer. So it is a very simple application. And the process now that, especially if somebody's looking at it right now today, a realistic time frame is collecting the information, and it's no different with the SBA or any loan, whether you're refinancing a home loan or having your information that's going to be required available and easy access, and giving the lender, all that information up front speeds up the process. But realistically, we can process applications. If we have all the information we need, we can get it processed, and certainly depending on when the information comes in, but we can get the information entered into the SBA portal, again, assuming they're not down, and we can turn around and fund these loans certainly within a couple of days. But as a general rule, Prevail, because of the volume we were looking, and our hope was to get the loans in and get them funded within 5 or 6 days initially. And I think it's even quicker now that the volume is down. So it is not it is not a slow process by any means. It's getting quicker because the volume's down, but there were some major delays, really just based on the pure volume early on.
And why I bring that up is obviously, we're down to, you said, possibly about $130 billion that's still available.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of businesses, a lot of businesses can weather anything for 30 days. And many people didn't have the opportunity because funding ran out, or just didn't really look at the program because they felt, at least in our state, that, hey, by the 1st of May, we'll be back up and running, we can weather the storm. Well, here we are on May 6th, and, the conversations that are taking place in our legislation, we don't know if we're open up at the end of the month or if this is going to extend into, summer or fall. So there's a lot of businesses that are now, looking at this tool, and it really is a tool if you use it right to see how they can fund their business. But one thing that I've heard from a lot of small business owners is the EIDL loan used to solely work with the SBA. I mean, at start to finish, you are working with the SBA. With the PPP program, you start with a local lender. And that is encouraging because, they know you, you know them. But what happens when the 8 weeks is done? Does that mean that business owner then, Lyle, is turned over to working with someone in the federal office that's a part of the Small Business Association, SBA, or do they get to maintain contact with you, their local banker?
They will maintain contact with the local banker. So the PPP program in particular was established to be handled by the community banks, or I shouldn't say by the community banks, but by the banks. So obviously at the end of the 8 weeks, they'll be meeting with their current banker or with their bank, and we'll be going over the expenses that they use the funds for. We are going to be regulated from the standpoint, we have to follow the SBA guidelines, so it isn't like we're going to be able to make up rules or do anything along that line. But what will happen is we'll be presented with the guidelines, and we have on certainly some of the information we've been receiving already, and it continues to come in. But ultimately, they'll sit down with their local banker. They'll provide the proof on where the funds were used, and then it's the local bank that signs off on the forgiveness aspect of it. And that's the part we're signing off on, saying, yes, this portion is forgiven, but it will also be, we're going to be regulated, obviously, by the SBA and follow those guidelines that will need to be used. So really, you are on the PPP program. You're working strictly with your bank from start to finish on the program.
And that's good news. That is a lot of good news for a
Yeah.
lot of the businesses that are listening out there. So, Lonnie, I guess one final question that probably still resonates is people have heard about this program. You don't have in the Prevail Bank logo, it doesn't say SBA lender, right? So what if I'm, a member of a banking institution and I don't know if my bank is SBA, or I found out that they're not an SBA lender? Can I still establish a relationship with an SBA lender such as yourself, even though, and still do this program, even though I didn't have a relationship with an SBA lender prior to February 15th?
Yes. I mean, we obviously are doing what we can to take care of our current customers, and we want to, make sure they're taken care of. But at the same time, we worked with a lot of now customers. They're customers of Prevail, but they may not have been customers at the beginning. So we were able to work with, we worked with over 180 businesses, and not all those were previous Prevail Bank customers. Our goal at Prevail Bank, as an example, is to help the community get stronger and be stronger. So a stronger community helps us, helps our bank, and at the same time, it helps the entire community. So even though there were a lot of financial institutions that were not SBA lenders, and a lot of banks, quite frankly, that only dealt with their own customers. We were open. We did, especially early on, listed a priority with our current customers because we felt obligated, to make sure that we could take care of those. But at the same time, we have expanded, and we'll look at trying to help anybody within the community, and do what we can to expand that business.
Well, Lonnie, I appreciate all the time you put into this conversation today. I hope there's someone out there that has had a couple questions answered, and I'm sure if there's more questions, they can definitely reach out to you. Guys' website is very useful. There's a lot of good contact information on there. Obviously, we know there's an eligibility for the PPP program, no different than there is an eligibility for any type of stimulus or federal funding or any type of loan program out there. We know there's going to be, and we have heard of some situations where the PPP loan or the EIDL loan wasn't necessarily right, or that individual business owner wasn't eligible for that program. In your experience, have you had any of those experiences where businesses were not able to find a solution? And if so, is there still an opportunity to use conventional financing if they need to, at least through your institution, or maybe some advice you might give them as they're making their choices as they go through this financial journey of uncertainty with the pandemic?
Sure. Sure. I mean, we pride ourselves in that we want to work with our customers and with prospects and provide them the proper advice and help wherever we can. So certainly through this project or through this process, there were companies that maybe either felt they didn't need the PPP money, maybe it wasn't a program that did work for them, and we'll work with them and look at conventional financing. We work constantly, and I think the thing that we're looking at during this COVID situation is this is going to be an ongoing process, and it's going to be an issue. The way I look at the PPP program is that's a great Band-Aid. It's put on here, and we're hoping the wound underneath it only needed a Band-Aid, but we don't know how things are going to turn out and how long things are going to go. So we work closely with our customers, and any new prospects that we would end up talking to. It's an individual conversation you have with that business. What are the needs and what are the programs that are available? The PPP program and the SBA programs right now are obviously very popular, especially the PPP program, because the government understands we're in a crisis situation and there's programs that normally would never be available. So that makes them more aggressive, or obviously a better program. But we'll continue to work with our customers, and there are customers that either didn't qualify for whatever reasons for the programs, or that we're working with on an individual basis, and we're working with them to give them payment help. Maybe it's to help expand their business or to cut back. So it's really an individual conversation we have with each business that we work with or hope to work with someday.
Well, Lonnie, thank you for all that insight today. I really do appreciate it. Before we go, I guess I'll open the floor up. Stacy, did you have any last comments or questions that you want to bring to the table for either your customers or just the citizens in central Wisconsin?
Yeah. Yes, thanks, Brandon. Actually, I did want to let you know, because thinking about it from if you're doing the research and just starting, like you had said you were maybe possibly looking at, we have put a resource out on our website that lists all of these loans out there and gives more resources for them if they do want to do some homework before they contact a lender. And it's open to anybody, whether you're going to talk to Prevail Bank or whether you're going to talk to somebody else. But it does give a lot more resources out there for anybody to look at.
And knowing that you're going to share that link with me, guys, that link is going to be in the description above. If it's not, call her and ask for her. But we'll put that in the description above as we air this video and podcast, so you guys can just click and get that information, because time is of the essence. So thanks, Stacy, for that. Anything, Lonnie, before we go that you want to cover? Last words?
I think we covered a lot of information, and I think the most important thing to me from any customer or prospect standpoint is open those communication gates and have conversations. If you have concerns, call a banker and find out what programs are out there. Usually when we go through concerns or issues like we're having now on, nobody can control this COVID-19 issue. So the earlier and the more open those conversations between your banker and yourself or others, the better off things will work out. And most of the time, the earlier we find out something, the earlier we can put ideas out there on how you can work through this process. So I know there's a lot of prideful people out there and prideful business owners, but sometimes it's just good to have the conversation even if you don't do anything, what are my alternatives? And I think those are discussions that we're not only having currently, but we're going to need, even once we start opening up this economy, et cetera. So it's a process, and we're here at Prevail Bank to make things possible in the future, and that's really what we want to do. Is we want to be their advisor, but at the same time, if you have doubts, you have questions, please move forward and don't waste any more time.
Sounds good. Well, Lonnie, Stacy, thank you for joining me. For everybody watching, go ahead, hit the subscription. The link's available in the description for you guys to learn a little bit more and get some answers about the PPP program. Guys, we are all weathering the storm together, and I think we'll come out of this stronger in the long run. So guys, thank you for tuning in. As always, I'm Brandon Boner for OnFocus. If you like what you're doing or have suggestions on our coverage, go ahead, DM us, give us some information, insight on what you're experiencing, and we'll do our best to cover the news that matters most to you. Until we see each other again, thank you for tuning in.